We have an incredibly vital question today, probably the most important question we can ask in our journey of growth and healing. And my opinion is probably the most ugly, yucky question that we all try and avoid. The question from Patrick in the UK is, how do we deal with shame? And Patrick writes particularly, how do we deal with shame derived from an abusive, neglectful childhood? Wow. Well, what inspires us as we're growing and healing ourselves is we love to read books like How to Be Awesome, How to Be the Best. But we forget there's a sacred emotion locked away deep inside of us. It's called shame. It looks like poison to us, yet I would dare say, if we can greet it appropriately, it's not poison, it's medicine. So Patrick, I love the question, and everybody else has probably already turned this video off. Oh, question about shame, I don't want to talk about that. I don't have shame, because I'm ashamed of my shame, so that means I get to have the delusional perception that I don't have shame. I fall for that one quite often myself. So, how to deal with shame, particularly from our childhoods? First off, realizing we have shame is step number one. We can consider, am I actually in touch with my shame? Or am I in denial of my shame? We could also add at this point, by the way, probably one of those two categories is going to be the perfect fit for all of us. Many would say shame is the lowest emotion. It's vibrationally speaking, the emotion closest to death that we can possibly get. Fear feels a whole lot better than shame. Shame is an emotion that says, I'm not worthy. I am a mistake. Guilt, just to contrast, guilt says, I made a mistake. Shame says, I am a mistake. So, what else we want to consider with dealing with it? Realizing that how we dealt with shame in our childhoods was primarily through not dealing with our shame. We might have been aware of it or not. Yet in our childhoods, we didn't deal with our shame, at least not our big shame. You know what? Because it's bigger than what a child's emotional digestive tract is equipped to handle. How children, and then people who become children just in an adult's body, how we continue to not deal with shame is the story's about to get pretty spooky here, is we become the shame. We become the poison. So we start acting out shame-based behaviors. We become so self-identified with the shame. Most, if not all of my behaviors, relationships, choices are driven by shame. Either to create a superficial sense of shame so I don't have to feel the deeper shame, or all these shame-based behaviors are derived to deny shame so I can just completely disconnect from it. Why is it so effective for the immature emotional consciousness of a child or adult child to become the shame? Because, I'm glad you asked the question, because if we're 100% self-identified with it, we have no contrast point. Therefore, we can't feel it. If I wasn't 100% shame, if I didn't completely create tunnel vision so that I have no sensitivity, no vision of the other parts of my being, then I would have one part of me that says, whoa, that feels like shame. There's a point of contrast. But if all of me is swimming in the shame, does a fish know it's swimming in water? Does a fish know it's swimming in shame? Does a fish know it's swimming in raw sewage? Which would probably be an improvement from shame. So for me, that's important to realize that how we dealt with shame in our childhood through not dealing with it will no longer serve us unless we want to live the rest of our life with the same limitations and self-imposed disempowering beliefs and self-imposed reactive strategies to disconnect from ourselves. That is a challenging life to live. What else I'd ask us all to consider on how to deal with shame is realizing the paradox. When we are the adult child with a lot of unresolved shame inside, we seek more shame in our life because it's comfortable. You say, no, it's horribly uncomfortable. Yes, and the paradox is we find comfort in the discomfort of it. Why? Well, if mom or dad or both or neither, if it was other people, but in childhood, if I was neglected or abused, there I'm flooded with shame. And there I feel like I'm in the company of my parents who are neglecting me, oddly enough, or my parents who are abusing me. So I become addicted to the shame because it recreates the familiar feeling of being parented. Logically, we would say that is hogwash. I'm surprised I just used that statement. But we would say that's hogwash. Why would we parent ourselves by recreating shame? If the fish has only swam in water, then water is all it's ever known. And this fish, Patrick fish, if it's only swam in the waters of being parented and nurtured through the unnurturing shame, that's what we're programmed to seek. We don't seek perfect parenting strategies for ourselves. We seek the ones we know of emotionally. I'd also ask us to consider on dealing with shame from our childhood. Whatever constituted the neglect and the abuse, I'd invite you to not let your logical mind discount it by rationalizing it away, by saying all children were spanked, all children went through this, or a lot went through this. Please don't let the servant of your mind step on the sacred gift of your heart. What creates abuse is purely in the perspective of the beholder. Some of us would have been neglected in ways that would have warranted intervention from the law. And others of us suffered shame through the perceived neglect of, mom went back to work. She stayed at home with me for the first 3 years of my life. Now she went back to work. That would be, if we fall into that category and we are affected by it, then that is as neglectful through the perspective of the wounded, shamed heart. Next consideration. Dealing with the shame means we have to feel it. Dealing with it by not dealing with it is principally I'm geared towards not feeling the full magnitude of it. If I have 500 volts of shame within me, and it's been in me for a few decades, I have to feel that voltage. Feeling is the evidence of healing. So how do we feel that? As I mentioned earlier, first we have to know it is there. Second, we have to know part of me is addicted to shame. Second, I need to become vulnerable and feel it. And how do we do that? We realize as a child by ourselves, we couldn't do it, at least not nearly to the degree that we needed to. So what I'd invite you to do, I'd like to give you a snapshot of a healing tool I use very often with clients. Have a chair for your child self who went through the neglect and who went through the shame. Have that chair reserved so you can become the 6-year-old boy who was neglected in the ways that you were neglected, abused in the ways you were abused. I'd ask you to sit in that chair and give yourself permission to be the young boy or the young girl and feel what's in there. Feel the shame. We're not trying to talk, you have nothing to be ashamed of. Well, that sort of inspiring talk has its place. We don't want to let that kind of inspiring talk be a seductive way to teach our inner child to have more shame about their shame. Oh, don't be ashamed. What we're really saying is you should be ashamed of the fact that you're ashamed. Don't do it anymore. Oh, I almost just choked there. So in this chair, in your second chair, you get to just be the child who has shame and feel it. This is the child universe in the confines of this chair. What's the difference between being this child now versus when you were this child 30 or 40 years ago? To me, the difference is the other chair. You have your adult faculties developed today. Don't worry, it's okay, you're not perfectly enlightened. It's okay, you're not perfectly functional. Your adult faculties of your mind, body, heart, and soul are present in your life today. They weren't there, available to you when you were a child. What a child needs before it will break open the cocoon to allow the rotten, expired shame to come out and be digested is it needs to feel safe and it needs to feel valued. Your child in this chair, your adult self, is sitting right next to the child. Your adult self is saying, I'm here with you. You were all by yourself with the abuse, the neglect when it happened. Never again will you be all by yourself. So let me help you feel this shame. And let me allow you to see me seeing your shame. And as you see me seeing your shame, I want you to see that I'm not ashamed of your shame. I accept you no matter how shameful you think you are. No matter how rotten you believe your parents were telling you you were through their behavior, our adult self says, I accept you as you are. And that gives us a beautiful gateway into probably one of the most vital strategies of dealing with the vital concept of resolving shame, which is we nurture ourselves in an empowering way rather than nurturing ourselves continually in a shameful way. What does empowered nurturing look like to me? It looks like compassionate acceptance. So we look at our child self and all it went through, and we go on a shame detoxification program when we say, dear child self, tell me all your stories. Tell me all the feelings about your stories. And I'll compassionately accept you, your feelings, and your stories. Wow. And Patrick and all of us who have been through shame, which is all of us, and then all of us who are in denial that we've been through shame, which is at least half of us, we're scratching the surface here. But this is such an important question posed by Patrick. I hope we can all get an insight or two from it to help us live our lives bigger than our mechanisms of denial of how we learn to deal with shame. Just two closing thoughts that I feel are really important. One is, because shame can be the most wounding of all emotions, please be your own judge, lack of a better word. Please use your self-judgment. If your shame runs pretty deep, please work with the appropriate type of coach or counselor so that you don't drown in the shame that you're trying to evaporate, if that makes sense. Please just know that can be important for a lot of people. And two, I'd also like to ask you to consider a resource. There's a beautiful book written about a meaningful topic. It's called Healing the Shame That Binds You, written by John Bradshaw. For me, it's an absolutely essential book. With that said, we've just taken a look at the vital topic of healing the shame from our past. If we don't do that, I would dare say the neglect of this vital topic is something that will impair our vital signs, our heart rate, our pulse, our cardiovascular system. What if it will decay to the very degree that we leave our shame neglected? How we will treat it and our inner child it's attached to the same way that the wound was created. Is that one of the reasons why 50% of people get heart disease? You and I have a choice. We can be ones who get heart disease, or we can be ones who live from the heart. I'll meet you there.